Nick Wilde is not a con artist. I know, he runs cons for a living. He admits it, he's proud of it. He calls it a hustle, sweetheart, with a grin that makes you think he invented the word. But that's not what he is. That's what he became. And there's a very specific moment in that film where an 8-year-old kid makes a decision, a quiet, private decision that shapes everything Nick Wilde will ever do for the rest of his life. You watched it happen. You just didn't see it. Most people remember Zootopia as a movie about a bunny who becomes a cop. And Nick is the reluctant sidekick, the smooth-talking fox who helps Judy crack the case, makes her laugh, and ends up with a badge at the end. Charming, cool, effortlessly competent. A little shady, but in a fun way. That's the Nick Wilde most of us carry around. The easy read is that he's just a con artist with a heart of gold. Cynical on the surface, secretly decent underneath. We've seen that character 1,000 times. And the film does let you believe that for a while. Nick is so good at being Nick that it's easy to forget he practiced. It's easy to forget he was something else first. Nick is a person who decided, at 8 or 9 years old, that the real version of himself was too dangerous to let anyone see. And he's been living inside that decision ever since. The scene most people mention is the Scout flashback, and it deserves every second of attention it gets. Nick tells Judy what happened, how his mother scraped together enough money to buy him a brand new uniform, how he walked into that initiation room as the only predator, the only fox, genuinely believing it wouldn't matter. He says it himself. He was going to be part of a pack. He was so proud. That sentence is doing a lot of work, because Nick Wilde, in every other moment of this film, is someone who doesn't let you see what he wants. He doesn't show pride. He doesn't show hope. He doesn't show anything that could be taken from him. But in that flashback, he drops all of it. And for a second, you see what he looked like before. Open, trusting, ready. And then the other kids muzzle him. They shove him to the ground, they put a muzzle on his face, and one of them says, and this is verbatim, "If you thought we would ever trust a fox without a muzzle, you're even dumber than you look." He's 8 years old. He recited the oath. He promised to be brave, loyal, helpful, and trustworthy. And they put a muzzle on him anyway.
I learned 2 things that day. 1, I was never going to let anyone see that they got to me.
And 2?
If the world's only going to see a fox as shifty and untrustworthy, there's no point in trying to be anything else.
That scene isn't only about prejudice. It's about the thing that happens when you bring your real self into a room and the room rejects it. Not the performance, not the mask, the actual, vulnerable, hopeful, real self. And the room says, no, not you, not ever. When that happens to you at 8 years old, you make a choice. Nick tells Judy exactly which one he made. That's not cynicism. That's strategy. That's a child alone in a room deciding that the safest thing he can do is become the thing they already think he is. Because if he is the thing they expect, no one can ever use it against him again. The fox who plays the sly fox can never be hurt by being called a sly fox. Watch what happens with this decision. Nick doesn't just become a con artist, he becomes a philosopher of limitation. He tells Judy, everyone comes to Zootopia thinking they can be anything they want. Well, you can't. You can only be what you are. Sly fox, dumb bunny. This is what he actually believes. He's not saying it to be cruel. He's saying it because it's the truth as he has lived it. The world told him what he was at 8 years old, and nothing since has proven them wrong. Because he never tried again. And then watch what he does when Judy shows up with her big dreams and her optimism and her refusal to accept that the world has already decided what she is. He tries to break her. He spends a full monologue describing how her dreams are going to die, how she'll end up going back to Bunnyburrow, how no one in this city cares about her or what she came here to be. That's not the behavior of someone who thinks she's pathetic. That's the behavior of someone who tried it, who showed up proud and earnest and was told, "Not you," and then watched his optimism get taken apart piece by piece. Nick isn't trying to hurt Judy. He's trying to save her from the specific pain he's never recovered from. The only way he knows how to protect something soft is to kill it before it gets hurt. There's a moment near the climax that most people blow past. Judy is at a press conference. The camera cuts to Nick in the crowd. He sees images of predators being muzzled, and something breaks through. His composure, his whole carefully constructed, nothing touches me face, just cracks. He flashes back to that room, to being 8 years old with a muzzle on his face. Decades later, mid-sentence at a press conference, the muzzle still gets in. That's the thing about the self you build to protect yourself. It works. It keeps you functional. It keeps you from being humiliated the same way twice. But it doesn't heal the thing underneath. It just buries it. And every now and then, something finds the exact shape of the original wound, and it comes straight through. And this is where I stop talking about a cartoon fox, because I think you know exactly what I'm describing. You had a version of this, maybe not as dramatic. Maybe it wasn't Scouts, maybe it was a classroom where you answered a question and everyone laughed. Maybe it was a tryout, an audition, a pitch, a friendship you extended and didn't get back. Maybe it was smaller than that. Someone who mattered said something in 3 seconds that you've been thinking about for years. And at some point after that, without announcing it, without deciding to, you became something slightly different. You became the person who doesn't try things they might fail at. Or the person who's too cool to care, who laughs first so no one else gets to. The one who already knows this isn't going to work out, who spots the flaw in every plan, who's pragmatic, realistic, who says, "That's not how things work," with an authority that sounds like wisdom, but is actually just protection. You became someone who is very, very good at the thing that keeps you safe. And you're good at it. The version of yourself you built works. It got you this far. It probably even looks like confidence from the outside. People probably admire it, but there's a difference between who you are and who you became. And most of us have stopped being able to feel that difference because the becoming happened so long ago and the built version is so practiced, and the original version, the one that walked into that room proud, feels so embarrassingly far away. Nick Wilde walked around for 20 years being good at being Nick Wilde, and the whole time, in his pocket, he kept the scarf from his Scout uniform. He kept it. He used it to bandage Judy's leg near the end of the film, the same cloth from the same uniform from the night the whole thing started. He'd carried it for 2 decades. Most people don't notice. The film doesn't explain it. It doesn't have to. The true self doesn't disappear. It waits. I've done this. Not with a scarf, but I've kept things. I have a journal from when I was 17 where I wrote very earnestly about what I wanted to do with my life. I found it a few years ago and I almost couldn't read it. Not because it was embarrassing, but because whoever wrote that was so unguarded, so certain that wanting something was enough of a reason to try. And somewhere between then and now, I'd learned to want things quietly, to hold them at a distance, to be the kind of person who has goals rather than dreams, because goals sound like you know what you're doing, and dreams sound like someone who doesn't know yet that things don't work out. I don't know exactly when I made that trade. At the end of Zootopia, Nick takes the badge. He stands in that room again, a room full of people deciding what to do with a fox, and this time, they give him the thing he always wanted. Not the Scout uniform, something better, a place in a pack that chose him back. The animators did something deliberate there. They mirrored his expression in that moment with the expression he had as a kid at the initiation. The same open, unguarded face. The same smile. Because it's the same person. It was always the same person. The sly fox, the con artist, the guy who told you dreams die in this city. Underneath all of that was a kid who promised to be brave, loyal, helpful, and trustworthy, and meant every word of it. He just had to find one person who asked for that version instead of the other one. You still have the scarf. I don't mean that poetically. I mean, the person you were before you made the decision is still in there. Not as a lesson, not as a redemption arc, just waiting. The things you wanted before you learned to want carefully. The way you used to be in a room before you learned to read it first. The version of you that showed up to the initiation proud. That version didn't go anywhere. Nick carried his for 20 years before he got to use it. You don't have to wait that long. If this one stayed with you, there's more where it came from. Every video on this channel takes a character you grew up with and asks what you actually missed.